Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
And welcome back, everyone. Holidays upon us, and with that comes a lot of fun, joy, a good time. Also comes a little bit of anxiety and intrepidation and a little bit of fear, because we're dealing with many different personalities, and sometimes it's challenging to work through that, especially when it's members of your family or very close friends. We're going to talk about navigating that today with somebody who helps a lot of people have much insight when it comes to dealing with personalities and some of the challenges along with that. She's the wonderful person behind New Beginnings, and that's a mental health center in Massachusetts. She is our Diamond of the Decade. Sherri Alexandrovich is back with us. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you today?
Very well, very well. And let's be honest. When Uncle Vinny shows up and he's had a couple of glasses of wine, and the real Uncle Vinny comes out, a little challenging there in terms of how we're going to deal with it. Where do you want to start today?
So I just thought maybe we could talk about some self-care around the holidays and the challenges in dealing with people with not just personality disorders, but different personality types. I think it's really challenging when, we're coming upon Thanksgiving and we're going to have family and friends. And, even if we're struggling at home with spouses or boyfriends, girlfriends, fiancés, and kind of just the importance of understanding when we're dealing with really challenging people, how can we protect ourselves and not get kind of sucked into that gaslighting? And I think that's an important topic for us to talk about today. We hear the word narcissistic personality disorder a lot. People throw around, oh, you're a narcissist, or that's a narcissist, or he's a narcissist. And I think that, there are people who exhibit narcissistic personality traits, and there are people who suffer from narcissistic personality disorder, and those are different in how they present. However, how we deal with them are really the same.
Say that again, because that is very impactful and important.
Okay. Yeah, so there are people who have narcissistic personality disorder, and there are people who exhibit narcissistic personality traits. Those are very different. So I think that there are a lot of people in this world who exhibit some sort of personality trait, not necessarily just narcissistic, but there's 10 different personality traits. And there are people who exhibit pieces of those, and then there are people who have the personality disorder. And one of the biggest distinctions is with the personality disorder, it's rooted from trauma. That's where a personality disorder forms. There is some research that suggests that genetics play a part. That's more kind of recent, but the root of all personality disorders are rooted from trauma. Those are early childhood experiences that shape, form, and change how our brain adapts, functions, and how we behave. A personality disorder, a true personality disorder, is not curable. There's not a medication that you can take for that. People with this type of disorder don't seek treatment because they don't have a problem. You are never going to convince somebody who has a narcissistic personality disorder that they have a problem. That's an important thing to remember. When you're in the middle of an argument or you're trying to defend yourself, you cannot change their reality. No matter how calm you are, no matter what you say to them, how you say things to them, vulnerability, they see that as a weakness. That's something that they will then use against you. So when you're dealing with somebody with a personality disorder and you're crying or you're upset and you're trying to say, well, you really hurt my feelings, or this is really impactful for me, they're not going to be able to see that from your perspective because their sense of self is very different than what you think it is. For them, they become defensive. They shut down. They become argumentative. They will gaslight you. and they will twist, turn everything that you say into it now being your fault. And by the time you're done, I don't know if you've personally ever had a conversation with somebody who's a narcissist, but you leave that conversation thinking, was that real? Did I say that? You are completely confused by the conversation because their sense of self is so different than what other people are experiencing, that their reality is so grounded and rooted in who they are that they're not going to see things from a different perspective.
Did I hear
The
you?
more you try to,
I'm not condoning anything here, but did I hear you say that many times people with disorders, maybe you said traits as well, it comes from traumas in their past or even their childhood?
Yes, and so that's an important element to understand, not necessarily the traits, because we all have different types of personality traits. Those aren't embedded or rooted from trauma, but the personality disorders in themselves are rooted from trauma. And when you're thinking about what is going on for the individual that you're trying to have a conversation with, you have to remember that their personality was formed and rooted from extreme trauma or intense trauma or something really horrific that's happened in their past. Saying that, though, I want to put that over here, but I think it's important to say that doesn't make it okay. Just because that person has had a traumatic background, or if you can have that empathy, especially if you're a true empath and you feel bad, and a lot of empaths will attract narcissists because they feel bad. You've been through this trauma, but their trauma becomes who they are. They now have adapted this whole personality that is so far from what reality is that no matter what you say, they're not going to get on board with that because they're going to see it very, very differently. Whenever you try to bring something to their attention, they become angry, manipulative, argumentative, and there really isn't, and defensive. We all know people that we've tried to deal with like that. And the more that you try to justify, the more that you try to give them your perspective, the more defensive that they become. There's an inability to see that they are the root cause. And because their ego is so fragile and
Wow.
embedded from trauma, they're not going to be able to look outside of that. It's too painful for them. Does that make sense?
Yes. And I never even considered, because a lot of times, and again, we're not condoning anything here, but many times, we look at somebody who we suspect is a narcissist. They make our lives very challenging, put it very carefully. But we don't consider that this is why they're doing it. And they don't even know why they're doing it. You say they become their trauma, but they're not even aware of it. And of all people, you can't even discuss it with them.
Right. And so they don't seek treatment. It's very rare that they'll seek treatment. And if they do, the treatment that they seek is because they're in a relationship with somebody who says, we need to go to couples work, or somebody has given them an ultimatum that, listen, either you go to therapy or this relationship is over. Usually there's an ultimatum that is, the precipitant to somebody with a personality disorder or some sort of court mandation, whether it be, in Massachusetts, it's called DCF social services or a court mandate. Typically, people do not come into therapy seeking help who have a personality disorder because they haven't really identified that they're the problem. Or they've come in and said, all right, I'm on my fourth divorce and this is, something's going on. Why do I keep attracting other people who make my life not successful? So they're not entering treatment because they have a problem or they're the precipitant to why they've had so many failed marriages or failed relationships, because that's not about them. The minute in therapy, you start to dig into that. Well, what's the onus? What's your part in this? What are the things that you're doing? They either drop out of therapy, they become defensive, they become argumentative, or they completely shift and they become the victim. And so it's an interesting dynamic, and it's one of the most difficult disorders to treat. Absolutely, hands down, that's just statistically proven.
Narcissism?
Personality disorders.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
On the
Mm-hmm.
narcissist, I've heard that many times their relationship with their mother kind of dictates if they're going to be a narcissist. Have you ever heard that?
I have not heard specifically the mother relationship being a precipitant to that. That doesn't mean that there's not a study out there that says that. I personally have not found a specific link with the mother-child relationship, the trauma in general. And I think that there are a lot of people who are adults that were raised by foster parents, caregiver, grandparents, who have a personality disorder. Whether that formative years was the trauma was from a mom or a dad, it's hard to say.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, in putting it in trauma in itself is just really where the root cause is in general. It's our earlier experiences that really kind of fragment and shape our personalities.
And I heard it was about the mother that there as a child needs not being met. I'm not throwing no parents under the bus at all. It's more about what the child needed. The parent may have thought that, no, I'm attentive, I'm there, you know, but they needed more potentially. Maybe they weren't heard or seen a certain way, and that can turn into narcissistic traits later in life. Something to that effect. I've heard a few times.
Mm-hmm. So I think that if a child's needs are not met and they're the basic fundamental needs, then yes, I could see a correlation with that.
Mm.
I think that if the needs are not met in a superficial way, meaning their basic needs were met, but the ability to meet all of their other needs, like, oh, I needed attention, when I came home from school and I was upset and the mom didn't realize that they were upset. I definitely would not correlate that. I mean, to have your personality altered, we're talking significant impact. We're not talking, your child came home from school, you were busy or you were at work and you didn't have time to sit down and do story time. I mean, those aren't typically the reasons for that.
Yep.
And yes, every kid is different. There are kids who are more sensitive than other kids. There are kids whose needs are greater than other kids. Absolutely, I agree with that. However, in order to shape our personality, you're talking something significant, not just mom wasn't able to be there when I needed her to console me. I mean, I
Yep.
definitely wouldn't relate that to it. So, I
Oh,
mean, statistically, 9% of the population suffer from a personality disorder.
s-
That's significant.
say that again. What?
9% of the population suffer from some form of a personality disorder.
Wow, interesting.
Mhm.
All right. Here it is, the holidays. Uncle Vinny came walking in, or whoever. Um, Maybe you've in your mind identified that they're a narcissist or they've got something going on there. How do we deal with that?
Couple of things. So, Jade, love the word Jade, Jade. I have it hanging on my desk at work. Don't justify, don't argue, don't defend, don't explain. So if you can just kind of keep that as your mantra in the back of your mind, because those are things that are not going to be helpful. And if you can then adopt the internal narrative that that's their story. And if you think about it, when somebody's saying or doing something in an accusatory, a manipulative, an argumentative way, that's their narrative. That's not your narrative. That might not even be reality. And sometimes it's validating for us when we're on the receiving end of somebody who is, being argumentative or manipulative or trying to gaslight us, which is, the number one thing that a narcissist will do, or somebody with a narcissistic personality trait, is if you can just kind of take your deep breath, take your pause, and say to yourself, that's Uncle Vinny's narrative.
Mm.
That's not reality. That's Uncle Vinny's narrative. because you can't convince yourself it's not happening. You can't convince yourself that it's okay, because it's not okay. But it's Uncle Vinny's narrative. Doesn't mean that it's the rest of the world's narrative.
It's so challenging to not engage because that relative could be saying things that, maybe has a different political view and they're just pushing your button and they're just going there. Probably, I would imagine the best thing to do in those situations is just to look at them and say, that's a very interesting point. I'm going to think about that and just walk out.
Absolutely. Don't engage.
Yeah.
The longer you stand there without setting really good, healthy boundaries, the longer that gaslighting is going to happen. I mean,
Yeah.
you have to understand that people with a personality disorder, they don't have empathy. They're guilt tripping you. They're gaslighting you. Their internal system is not about what your experience is. They don't have that ability to stop and say, oh, I can see that, my niece over here is, from Uncle Vinny's perspective, going with a narrative here, is upset because now what Uncle Vinny is thinking is, wow, she's being dramatic, or he's being dramatic, or he's just trying to make me look bad, because now it's about them, right? Don't forget the 5 traits of a narcissist personality disorder is this grandiose sense of self, right? They're very important and they should be the center of all attention. They have this excessive need for admiration. Look at me. What have I done? I'm wonderful. Sense of entitlement. How dare you? You couldn't possibly be referring to me. I'm entitled to be able to treat you that way. You said this to me, or you've upset me. Their willingness to exploit others. That's a good one, because they will take your vulnerability and they will use that and weaponize it against you in the most malicious, meanest, intentional way. And then the minute that you start to cry, or you get upset, or you walk away, or you set a boundary, now it's your fault. I'm the victim. I'm not the perpetrator. I'm the victim. All I was trying to do was explain something to you, and you got upset and you walked away from me. I wasn't even done talking. How dare you walk away from me? What right do you think that you have to talk to me that way? And then there's lack of empathy. They don't feel bad that you're upset. They feel bad that they're no longer the important person in the room.
How probable is it that somebody's hearing this or watching it and, thinking to themselves, this is good information. I know a couple of people like that. How probable could it be that somebody may be listening or watching and saying to themselves, after what you just said, oh, wait a minute, that's me. Maybe I'm a narcissist. No, I like to be positive. Wow.
I like to be positive as well. I mean, I am an internal optimist at my core. However, through experience, professional, personal statistics, if a person had the ability to stop and say, wow, I think I exhibit some narcissistic traits, they're not a narcissist. I actually had a client this morning say to me, kind of what was like prompted this thought of conversation is, do you think that I'm a narcissist? And my immediate words were no. And then I went through kind of the dialogue as to why I didn't think that this person was a narcissist. A narcissist is not going to say, I think that I'm a narcissist, because they have an inability to see things from a different perspective. It is all about them. It's egocentric. It's all about who they are and how can they be the limelight. They're not wrong.
Can we go over that just briefly, the difference between the narcissist and somebody with narcissistic traits?
Okay, sure. So a person with a narcissistic personality disorder, they have a disorder, again, embedded and rooted from trauma. As some studies are saying, there's a genetic or a cultural component to that, but underlying it, there's the trauma. Their personality has been shifted. It's been altered. It's changed. The ability to then change it back. What we can do, there's CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, there's reframing, there's perspective taking, typically unsuccessful. Somebody with personality traits, Well, they could have traits of a narcissist. They could have traits of borderline personality disorder. They could have traits of, attachment. They could have different traits, meaning, there might be somebody who just really craves and needs attention, and that's who they are. Their ego's a little bit fragile. We could have people who, are very challenging and argumentative and manipulative. Those are parts of their personality that have been formed that can also be shaped and reshaped. There's the difference. Somebody who has some of these traits can identify that the way that they're acting or reacting and be able to have that conversation and then gain some insight. Somebody with a personality disorder, there isn't going to be that ability to make that connection.
Interesting. Wow. We've identified a lot here today. Anything else that we should be aware of going into the holidays, dealing with different personalities?
I think that self-care is really important. Set boundaries. Don't back down from your boundaries. If you know that you're going to be around people who are argumentative, defensive, manipulative, choose your space calmly. Be able to, how long you're going to be exposed to them. Just be really mindful of situations that you're in. Walk away.
And is it okay to say in your mind, it's not me, it's them, and just kind of
right? Well, I think that's their narrative, right? That's Uncle Vinny's narrative. That's mom's narrative. That's dad's narrative. That doesn't have to be my reality. That's their reality. And I think I know for me personally, that's helped me through quite a few situations in my life personally, just to be able to, because for me, that feels really validating, right? We're not saying that what you're experiencing is wrong. We're saying that that's that other person's narrative. But I have a right, as me, Sherri Alexandrovich, I have a right to feel upset, angry, to feel like I've been mistreated. But that doesn't mean that the other person is going to change their perspective, because that's their perspective and that's how they're going to view it. And it could be as blatant as looking at things. And I know this is not a great analogy, but it's a really clear one where, you've got two people looking at the same thing and one sees red and one sees blue. You're not going to get a narcissist to see red. You're not going to get them to do that, right? They see blue. They're firm in that. They're not going to change their mind. That is what their belief system in their core of who they are. And for them to admit that the color that they're seeing is wrong, that is so fragile to who they are that they're just not going to do it. They're going to spin it and say, well, you must need glasses, or I'm sure that you're colorblind. There could be 5 people seeing the same color as you, and the narcissist sees something different, but the 5 of us are always going to be wrong. That is just the reality of, and I know that that's a strange, but hopefully it's a good visual though, right?
Oh,
the
no,
5 of
it's
us
good.
are always going to, right? That one they're not going to see that color. It does not matter. There's nothing you're going to say. So you can continue to argue. You can continue to even try to be calm and reframe and say, no, but there are 5 of us. How could 5 people all be seeing the color red? And Uncle Vinny, how are you still seeing blue? Like, can you just for a minute maybe take a step, maybe take a blink, maybe look at it a little closer? Uncle Vinny's going to be like, the 5 of you guys are conspirating against me. You guys have all had that conversation before you walked in the room. I don't know what's going on with the 5 of you guys, but he's going to get angry. He's going to argue with you. He's going to manipulate you. And I can tell you from experience that the 5 of us are going to walk away going, was it really blue? Maybe it was blue, right? Because I don't know if you've ever had a true conversation with one, but my God, I have.
Oh, I hear you. And I've often heard, always present the facts. Dealing with a narcissist, present the facts. But after hearing what you're saying here, 2 words, walk away. Uncle Vinny, what color do you see? If you see that color, you see
I
that
love it. Absolutely. Yes.
And it's the truth. If Uncle Vinny sees it.
And if you try and agree to disagree, a narcissist is not going to fall for that.
Yep.
Because they're not going to disagree because they're right.
Thank you for the insight today. We're armed and ready for the holidays.
Just remember the mantra, right? Remember the mantra, Jade, and remember it's their narrative. Just continue to repeat that in your mind take a breath, take a pause, have some self-care, and set good boundaries. Because if you don't, they're going to come in at every angle imaginable and just blow everything apart that you have just really tried to build walking into that holiday event.
Wow. Newbeginningswc.com is your website. You work with people in Massachusetts, but virtually can be done too, especially maybe you're dealing with some people that have interesting and challenging personalities. Sherri Ann, thank you so much for today. Just good insight and validates and also dispels some myths that I think many of us have had, when it comes to narcissism. Really appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. I hope everybody has a really happy holiday.
Yeah. Happy Thanksgiving too.
Oh, happy Thanksgiving, and we'll see you next week.
You got it. We'll be right back.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Let's go inside the mind of a 10-year-old.
I should have worn those earrings today. I like those earrings. Gabby has those awesome earrings. I need to ask her where she got those, but that's just what she would want me to do. I'll have Michaela ask her for me.
Buckle up, Sarah.
Yeah, but then Michaela will be like, why don't you just ask her yourself? That's just like Michaela.
Sarah, buckle up.
Michaela's such a great name. I wish I was called Michaela. There's like a dozen Sarahs in my class.
Hey, we're not hitting the road until you buckle up, honey.
Oh yeah, seatbelt. I forget sometimes because my brain is like busy, I wonder if there's pizza at school today.
Sometimes it can be tough to get through to your kids, but it's not impossible. Always make sure they're wearing their seatbelts, even on short drives. Remember, you have the keys, you have the power. Never give up until they buckle up. A message from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council. Visit safercar.gov/kidsbuckleup for more information.